Kota Kendari merupakan ibu kota dari Provinsi Sulawesi Tenggara yang terletak di bagian selatan garis Khatulistiwa. Dengan luas area 267.000 hektar yang terdiri dari 11 kecamatan dan 66 kelurahan. Hal ini mendorong kantor Pertanahan Kota Kendari untuk ikut berpartisipasi dalam pembangunan Kota Kendari dengan terus berbenah dan melakukan perbaikan layanan dari manual ke digital untuk menuju kantor layanan modern. Untuk meningkatkan pelayanan pertanahan kepada masyarakat, Kantor Pertanahan Kota Kendari telah banyak melakukan transformasi berupa perubahan infrastruktur, yang diantaranya perubahan fisik bangunan dan fasilitas-fasilitas pelayanan yang ada di front office maupun dengan kenyamanan sumber daya manusia di bagian back office. Kinerja pelayanan modern dari Kantor Pertanahan Kota Kendari tidak lepas dari sarana dan prasarana pendukung yang lengkap guna memudahkan masyarakat dalam mengakses informasi dan pemanfaatan layanan bidang pertanahan. Sarana prasarana yang disiapkan antara lain layanan antrian elektronik, loket layanan yang tertata rapi sehingga memudahkan pemohon dan mempercepat proses pengurusan dokumen tanah warga, ruang tunggu yang representatif yang dilengkapi dengan fasilitas seperti AC, kotak pengisian baterai smartphone, dan Wi-Fi gratis. Tidak hanya itu, juga disiapkan fasilitas khusus bagi penyandang disabilitas, tempat bermain anak dan laktasi, serta ruang bagi UMKM. Selain itu, Kantor Pertanahan Kota Kendari juga melakukan transformasi pelayanan yang berbasis elektronik dengan sistem digitalisasi, di antaranya pemeliharaan data pertanahan, di mana salah satunya pelayanan plottingan sertifikat yang data pemetaannya belum masuk dalam pemetaan online. Kantor Pertanahan juga sudah melakukan digitalisasi arsip yang memudahkan dalam pencarian arsip dan warka pertanahan. Melalui terobosan baru, Kantor Pertanahan Kota Kendari membuat ruangan Comment Center sebagai pusat kendali data dan informasi pelayanan pertanahan yang transparan kepada masyarakat. Dengan tujuan agar masyarakat semakin mudah dalam mendapatkan informasi tentang pertanahan, seperti informasi lapor pertanahan, aplikasi tuntas, IKM Indeks Kepuasan Masyarakat, layanan pengaduan, monitoring, layanan prioritas, PTSL, e-office, HT elektronik, dan aplikasi Gema Batas.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya Asep Heri, Kakanwil BPN Sultra, mendukung pencanangan Kantor Pertanahan Kota Kendari menuju Kanta Modern, layanan berbasis elektronik untuk memberikan layanan pertanahan bagi masyarakat yang lebih mudah, cepat, transparan, dan akuntabel. Melalui inovasi ini, Kanta Kendari dapat mewujudkan pembangunan zona integritas. Saya juga berharap inovasi ini dapat diikuti oleh kanta-kanta lain di Provinsi Sulawesi Tenggara.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya Dr. Herman Sairi, SSID MT, Kepala Kantor Pertanahan Kota Kendari. Dalam mewujudkan kantor pertanahan modern, untuk menunjang zona integritas menuju wilayah bebas korupsi di Kantor Pertanahan Kota Kendari, saat ini kami sedang membangun sistem berbasis elektronik dengan meluncing ruangan Comment Center sebagai pusat kendali data dan informasi pelayanan pertanahan yang transparan kepada masyarakat. dukung kami menuju kantor pertanahan modern, Sultra hebat untuk Indonesia Emas.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya, Asmaul Sepu, penjabat Wali Kota Kendari, mendukung kantor pertanahan Kota Kendari dalam mewujudkan kantor pertanahan modern. Dengan sistem pelayanan elektronik dan digitalisasi, dengan melonsing ruangan Command Center sebagai pusat kendali data dan informasi pelayanan pertanahan secara transparan kepada masyarakat, sebagai penunjang menuju zona integritas, wilayah bebas dari korupsi atau BBK, dan wilayah birokrasi bersih melayani atau WBBM. Terima kasih. Demikian. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Selamat datang di Kabupaten Muko-Muko. Kabupaten yang terkenal dengan makanan khas rendang lokan ini adalah salah satu kabupaten yang berada di ujung utara Provinsi Bengkulu, yang berbatasan langsung dengan Provinsi Sumatera Barat dengan luas wilayah kurang lebih 414.700 hektar. Kabupaten Muko-Muko terdiri dari 15 kecamatan dan 148 desa. Dengan melihat luas wilayah dan besarnya jumlah penduduk, maka urusan pertanahan memegang peran penting sehingga harus ditangani secara profesional demi tercapainya target pembangunan dan kesejahteraan masyarakat di Kabupaten Muko-Muko. Untuk itu, Kantor Pertanahan Kabupaten Muko-Muko yang berlokasi di Jalan Imam Bonjol, Kelurahan Banda Ratu, Komplek Perkantoran Pemda Muko-Muko, hadir dan siap dalam memberikan pelayanan pertanahan kepada masyarakat. Dengan jumlah pegawai 52 orang, yang terdiri dari 24 ASN, 2 P3K, 22 PPNPN, dan 4 ASK siap memberikan pelayanan prima kepada masyarakat. Dalam rangka memberikan pelayanan yang maksimal, demi kenyamanan masyarakat, Kantor Pertanahan Kabupaten Muko-Muko menyediakan berbagai macam fasilitas seperti loket pelayanan, ruang tunggu yang nyaman, free coffee, free charging, ruang laktasi, area bermain anak, toilet khusus bagi pemohon, apar atau alat pemadam api ringan, CCTV, tempat parkir khusus penyandang disabilitas, kursi roda, dan fasilitas pelayanan prioritas untuk ibu hamil, lansia, dan penyandang disabilitas. Pertanahan juga mempunyai inovasi pelayanan seperti lamaran atau yang lebih dikenal dengan layanan malam hari kantor Pertanahan. Pelayanan ini diperuntukkan bagi pemohon yang tidak sempat datang ke kantor Pertanahan pada jam operasional. Maka, pemohon dapat mengurusnya di malam hari dengan kriteria permohonan yaitu roya, SKPT, plotting bidang tanah, layanan pengaduan, konsultasi tanah, dan pengambilan produk pertanahan. Selanjutnya, yakni layanan peti kemas, yaitu pengantaran sertifikat ke masyarakat guna meningkatkan pelayanan pertanahan kepada masyarakat. Dengan begitu, pemohon dengan kriteria layanan pemohon langsung tanpa kuasa, pemohon disabilitas, atau pemohon lanjut usia akan diantarkan sertifikatnya ke rumah secara langsung oleh petugas dari kantor Pertanahan Kabupaten Komuko.
Saya ucapkan terima kasih kepada BPN yang telah mengurus sertifikat saya dan mengantar sertifikat sampai ke rumah.
Terima kasih kepada bapak-bapak BPN dari Muko-Muko telah mengantarkan sertifikat ke rumah kami dan diberikan souvenir berupa payung. BPN Muko-Muko mantap.
Kantor Pertanahan Kabupaten Muko-Muko secara rutin melaksanakan kegiatan olahraga, di antaranya voli dan senam bersama guna tercapainya pegawai yang prima secara jasmani ataupun rohani demi memberikan pelayanan yang optimal. Kantor Pertanahan Kabupaten Muko-Muko berhasil meraih beberapa penghargaan, di antaranya Zona Hijau Pelayanan Publik dari Ombudsman Republik Indonesia, Satuan Kerja IKPA Terbaik, Satuan Kerja Terbaik kategori Kinerja PTSL, Satuan Kinerja Terbaik 2 kategori Realisasi Keuangan, dan Satuan Kinerja Terbaik 3 kategori Realisasi Anggaran.
Kabupaten Polewali Mandar adalah salah satu kabupaten di Provinsi Sulawesi Barat yang secara resmi ditetapkan dalam bentuk Peraturan Pemerintah Nomor 74 Tahun 2005. Secara administratif, Kabupaten Polewali Mandar terbagi ke dalam 16 kecamatan yang terdiri atas 144 desa dan 23 kelurahan dengan luas wilayah sekitar 202.230 hektar. Dengan beragam geografis yang mencakup pantai, pegunungan, dan dataran tinggi, kabupaten ini memiliki potensi sumber daya alam yang sangat melimpah. Pertanian, perikanan, dan perkebunan menjadi sektor ekonomi utama yang menjadi keunggulan pada Kabupaten Polewali Mandar dalam peningkatan perekonomian dan kesejahteraan masyarakat.
Saya Haji Andi Ibrahim Masdar, Bupati Polewali Mandar, menyampaikan bahwa saat ini Kabupaten Polewali Mandar tengah melaksanakan program Reforma Agraria tahun 2023 dan merupakan amanah reforma agraria dalam Peraturan Presiden Nomor 86 Tahun 2018 dan telah menjadi prioritas dalam Rencana Pembangunan Jangka Menengah Nasional 2020-2024. Sebagai Ketua Tim Gugus Tugas Reforma Agraria Kabupaten Polewali Mandar, kami berkomitmen untuk mensukseskan penyelenggaraan reforma agraria dengan penyelesaian permasalahan pertanahan, mendorong akses ekonomi, serta mendukung kelestarian lingkungan, keadilan sosial, dan kesejahteraan masyarakat Polewali Mandar. Bersama kita wujudkan masa depan lebih baik. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Polman Jago.
Sepanjang perjalanan pelaksanaan reforma agraria pada tahun 2023 di Kabupaten Polewali Mandar, tim gugus tugas reforma agraria dan pelaksana harian mengadakan berbagai rapat dan kegiatan teknis lainnya. Tujuannya antara lain untuk mencapai kesepahaman dan kesepakatan bersama terkait arah kebijakan pelaksanaan reforma agraria. Tim gugus tugas reforma agraria juga melaksanakan pendataan dan penataan aset potensi tora dan mengintegrasikan program dari lintas sektor. Kegiatan gugus tugas reforma agraria mencapai puncaknya dengan menindaklanjuti hasil legalisasi aset dengan penanganan akses bagi pelaku usaha sebagai penerima manfaat. Reforma agraria yang mengamanatkan penataan aset dan penataan akses adalah bukti hadirnya pemerintah dalam mendukung kesejahteraan masyarakat.
Pelaksanaan reforma agraria tahun 2023 di Kabupaten Polewali Mandar dilaksanakan oleh jajaran kantor pertanahan melalui program penataan.
Selamat siang, mohon izin acara webinar kami mulai. Perkenalkan, nama saya Indit, Master of Ceremony Kamis Webinar Kamis Belajar. Kami ingatkan kepada Bapak Ibu peserta untuk bisa mengaktifkan kamera dan menggunakan virtual background yang sudah disediakan. Dan juga kami persilahkan kepada Bapak Ibu peserta untuk bisa melakukan presensi di LMS PPSDM dengan password 1515. Sekali lagi dengan password 1515. Bapak Ibu hadirin yang berbahagia, selamat datang di webinar internasional dengan tema Integrasi Agraria, Pertanahan, dan Tata Ruang, Perspektif Negara Jerman dan Jepang. Senang rasanya di hari Kamis 14 Desember 2023, kita semua bisa hadir di ruang Zoom, berkumpul dan belajar bersama dalam topik yang sangat menarik. Mentari senja telah tenggelam, hujan turun mulai terjatuh. Saya awali dengan salam, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Yang terhormat, Bapak Dr. Agustiarsyah SSIT SHMP, Kepala Pusat Pengembangan Sumber Daya Manusia, Kementerian Agraria dan Tata Ruang Badan Pertanahan Nasional. Yang kami hormati, Bapak Dr. Eng Norihisashima, Associate Professor of Regional Development Studies, Toyo University, Japan. Profesor Walter Timo de Vries, Professor of Land Management and Land Development, Technical University of Munich, Germany. Welcome to our forum. Thank you very much for your availability to be our speakers today. Para peserta webinar yang berbahagia, webinar hari ini akan dipandu oleh Bapak Dr. Andes Arwin Baso, MM, KRMO, KRMP. Dan webinar hari ini akan berakhir pada pukul 15.15 WIB. Untuk mengawali rangkaian acara di siang hari ini, marilah kita dengarkan bersama sambutan yang akan disampaikan oleh Kepala Pusat Pengembangan Sumber Daya Manusia. Kepada Bapak Kapus, kami silahkan.
Baik, terima kasih Mbak Indit. Apakah suara saya bisa didengar dengan jelas?
Sudah Bapak aman.
Baik. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Good morning, Prof. Walter Timo de Vries, Professor of Land Management and Land Development, TUM School of Engineering and Design, Technical University of Munich, German, and Associate Professor Department of Regional Development Studies, Toyo University, Japan. Norihisashima, Dr. Engineering. Selamat siang, Bapak Dr. Andes Arwin Baso, MM, KRMO, Widya Suara Ahli Madya, PPSDM. Para pejabat pimpinan tinggi Madya, para pejabat pimpinan tinggi Pratama, para pejabat administrator dan pengawas, para pejabat fungsional, dan seluruh peserta webinar yang bergabung secara virtual. First of all, let's pray and thanks unto our God Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, who has been giving us some mercies and blessing, so we can attend and gather in this room in good condition and happy situation. All participants in this webinar series, we are focusing on the theme of integration of agrarian, law and spatial planning. Listen, learn from Japan and Germany. As we know, for almost a decade, agrarian, land and spatial planning has been integrated under the Ministry of ATR BPN. However, the impression of business as usual is still strongly felt especially when we are confronted with the demands of various national strategic agenda. We still face classic challenge of policy synchronization that appears to be sectoral. There are still many overlapping data and regulation on land and spatial planning, making it difficult to optimize the function of agrarian affairs, land management, and spatial planning within a mutually synergistic framework. With best practice example that we can learn from our two speakers, Professor Sima from Japan and Professor Walter from Germany. I hope we can gain valuable insight into how both countries regulate their land and spatial planning sector and how this aspect can synergize. We know that both countries have proven land and spatial planning systems that have successfully made a positive impact on sustainable development. Together, we will learn how to those countries successfully implement land and spatial planning policies, achieve optimal balance between development and environmental sustainability, and integrated economic, social, and environmental interests within these policies. Once again, thank you, Prof. Walter and Prof. Sima. Welcome home, special for Prof. Walter. This is your wife country. Thank you, tim monitoring tugas belajar Jepang, dan tim short kostum dari Dirjen Tata Ruang dan Undip. Terima kasih Bapak Menteri, Bapak Wamen yang telah memberikan support dan dukungan yang begitu besar untuk terselenggaranya webinar internasional ini. Terima kasih juga untuk Pak Sekjen dan Pak Dirjen Taru serta seluruh panitia yang sudah membuat acara ini terselenggara. Thank you also to Mr. Arwin. This class is yours. I leave it to you whether in classroom is full English or can we mix in Indonesian. Thank you for your attention and participation. Enjoy this webinar. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih kepada Bapak Kapus atas sambutannya. Baik Bapak Ibu sekalian, telah hadir di ruang Zoom moderator yang akan memandu webinar hari ini, yaitu Bapak Dr. Andes Arwin Baso, KRMO, KRMP, Widya Suara Ahli Madya, PPSDM Kementerian Agraria dan Tata Ruang Badan Pertanahan Nasional. Kepada Bapak Arwin, waktu dan tempat secara virtual kami persilahkan.
Terima kasih Indit. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Yang terhormat Bapak Kepala Pusat Pengembangan Sumber Daya Manusia, Bapak Ibu sekalian, para peserta webinar kita siang ini. Webinar kita siang ini merupakan sesi yang spesial karena mungkin untuk pertama kalinya kita menghadirkan pembicara yang berkelas internasional. Bapak Ibu sekalian, hari ini seminar kita akan dibagi dalam dua sesi besar. Yang pertama sekarang sampai dengan pukul 14.00 dan selanjutnya pukul 14.00 sampai pukul 15.15. Nah, sehubungan dengan waktu dari para narasumber, maka seminar ini akan kita laksanakan secara terpisah. Sesinya secara terpisah, maksudnya begitu. Nah, Bapak Ibu sekalian, sesi pertama akan diisi oleh Bapak Profesor Norihisa Shima. Profesor Shima, can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, very clearly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Shima. Let me introduce you to the participant first.
Thank you very much.
Profesor Norihisa Shima adalah Associate Professor dalam Regional Development di Toyo University, Japan. Beberapa pengalaman mengajar beliau di dalam yang saya peroleh dari kurikulum vitae yang saya terima adalah antara lain dalam bidang Urban Environment Design, Fundamental of Urban Studies and Planning, kemudian Regional Planning, Regional Design Studio, dan banyak lagi yang lain. Profesor Shima memperoleh gelar Academic Bachelor of Engineering dari Department of Urban Engineering, University of Tokyo, kemudian Master of Engineering juga di Department of Urban Engineering, University of Tokyo, kemudian Doctor of Engineering di Department of Urban Engineering, University of Tokyo. beberapa pengalaman posisi beliau saat ini, antara lain yang dapat tentunya tidak bisa saya bacakan satu persatu karena banyak sekali. Saya membatasi dan meng-highlight beberapa hal, antara lain adalah committee member Architectural Committee, Koshigaya City Government, Japan, adjunct lecturer, Department of Urban Engineering, the University of Tokyo, and then sub-manager, a model project for local resource-based rural planning and mountainous region of Vietnam, dan banyak lagi yang lain. Beberapa karya beliau, antara lain di tahun 2000, maksudnya di current international project, pekerjaan-pekerjaan internasional yang sedang dikerjakan beliau adalah model project for local resources-based rural planning and mountainous region in Vietnam, and then Unicam Tokyo Collaborative Study Program, interdisciplinary approach towards revitalization from 2016 Central Italy earthquake, bersama dengan University of Camerino, dan seterusnya, banyak lagi yang lain. Bapak Ibu sekalian, itu kurang lebih CV dari Profesor Shima, dan beliau akan menyajikan materi yang bertopik Japan's Land Use Regulation System and Recent Urban Challenges. Bapak Ibu sekalian, para peserta webinar, di dalam seminar ini kami menyediakan dua cara untuk mengajukan mengajukan pertanyaan maksudnya. Yang pertama adalah Anda bisa mengajukan pertanyaan secara verbal, dan yang kedua, sebentar lagi operator juga akan menyajikan link Pigeonhole di mana Anda bisa mengajukan pertanyaan secara tertulis. Jika mungkin tidak bisa dijawab secara lisan, mudah-mudahan nanti Profesor Shima bisa menjawabnya secara tertulis. If you don't mind, Profesor Shima, we make two ways of asking question later on. The first, of course, we will prioritize those who will ask questions verbally, but at the same time, if some participants will prefer to ask question in written form, then we also provide a Pigeonhole link, so they can ask question in written form. I hope you don't mind.
Any form is okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Shima. And our time is as agreed until 2 o'clock p.m. and you have, say, 30 to 45 minutes for your presentation, and then we will continue the rest of the time with question and answer. Bapak Ibu sekalian yang saya hormati, mari kita sambut Associate Professor Regional Development of Toyo University, Dr. Engineering Norihisa Shima. Professor Shima, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Selamat siang, Bapak, Ibu-Ibu dan sekalian. Guten Morgen and konnichiwa. Saya berterima kasih Bapak Agus dan Bapak Arwin Baso dan Bu Indi dan all the team members from ATR-BPN for organizing this international seminar. Nama saya Shima dari Universitas Toyo. Spesialisasi saya adalah perencanaan kota dan wilayah. Kalau kemarin saya tinggal di Jogja, waktu S3 untuk survei tentang perencanaan kota dan wilayah di Jogja. Khususnya tentang sistem perencanaan pembangunan dan muslimban dan sistem tata ruang. Jadi saya sedikit tahu tentang sistem tata ruang di Indonesia. Kalau kemarin memang saya bisa pakai bahasa Indonesia saja untuk presentasi hari ini, tapi sekarang udah lama sekali. Jadi sekarang saya pakai bahasa Inggris, maaf sekalian. Thank you very much once again for inviting me for this opportunity. My name is Shima from Toyo University, specialized in urban and regional planning. Actually, I have long engaged in field survey in Indonesia, Indonesia's Tata Ruang. And recently, I'm also engaged in some developmental projects initiated by JICA, such as Nusantara New Capital City, and Lebana Regional Development Project. So today, the topic that I am supposed to present is the Japan's experience, particularly with focus on land use regulation. So let me have screen now. Today, can you see my screen? No? For the moment, please. Can you see the screen? Today, I will talk about experience of Japan, entitled Japan's Land Use Regulation System and Recent Urban Challenges. Before going into the detail of Japan's land use regulation system, I'd like to provide some basic knowledge about Japanese cities and regions that would enhance your understanding of Japanese system and as well as the issues that we have at present. As you know, Japan has a national territory of the area of 378,000 square kilometers with a population of 125 or 6 million. And as you may know, Japan also has a lot of islands, like Indonesia. We have approximately 6,852 islands with 5 main islands and 422 inhabited islands. So naturally, the national territory of Japan is very large. We have national territory of Japan is approximately 3,000 kilometers from west to north, west to east, and 2,700 kilometers from north to south. We have this very large national territory. So, for example, when I travel from Tokyo to Jakarta, it takes about 7 hours. But approximately 3 hours are flying over the national territory of Japan because of this largeness. However, as we can see from geographical map of Japan, the habitable area of Japan is very limited because the approximately 2/3 or 3/4 of the national territory of Japan is a forest area. I mean, the non-habitable area. So we have only 1/3 or 1/4 of the national land is available for the habitation. Then we should know we have much rainfall in this national territory. This graph shows the average annual rainfall by the countries. But average annual rainfall is not as large as much as Indonesia, but the average national rainfall of Japan is almost as much as Thailand or something. We have this much rainfall in this national territory. Then, because of our topographical situation, the river slope, when we compare the river slope in comparison with the river slopes in different countries, for example, Mekong River like this, and the Rhine River like this. When we compare the river slope to those international rivers, they are the slopes of rivers in Japan. Our rivers are very steep. So when we consider this much rainfall and the steep river slopes, we have been always suffering from the challenge of water. Water means the water usage as well as the flooding issue is also the critical, particularly under the climate change and more frequent and severe rainfall that we have at present. Then not only the natural disaster, but also we should know our population is decreasing. The peak population of Japan was marked in 2008 with a population of 8 million. And now our population is rapidly increasing. It is estimated that in the year of 2050, the population will decrease down to 100 million population. However, we should know the demographical trend between the three metropolitan regions of Tokyo, Osaka, and Nagoya, and regional cities. This graph shows the demographical trend of Japan, the demographical trend of three metropolitan areas and regional cities. Then when we from the year of 1955 till present. So when we look at this demographical trend, those three metropolitan areas has accepted the migration from outside, particularly from the regional area of Japan. And even at present, Tokyo metropolitan area shows positive in the migration. So here the point is that only Tokyo metropolitan area is accepting the migration from outside the Tokyo region. And in other areas, even including Osaka metropolitan and Nagoya metropolitan, the regional cities are now suffering from the decreasing population. And this is the demographical trend of Japan. So naturally, we have land management issue. We have to think about the land management under this depopulation. Then depopulation is very critical, particularly in the regional cities. This map shows the status of population increase or decrease in the year of 2060. So in this map, the area with red will have increasing population. Then the blue or yellow area is this area of decreasing population. So please look at where the population is increasing. Very limited area, you know. Surprisingly, when we calculate the population trend, approximately 20% of the national land will become national land of Japan will become population zero. In 2060, will become a kind of ghost town, and approximately 40% of the national land will lose its population by 50% or over. This trend, considering the demographical trend of a metropolitan area and the regional cities, naturally, in the regional cities, this population or population decrease is serious and will become more serious in the coming decade. Then talking about the disaster risk and the population trend of Japan, when we look at the major disasters that we have in Japan, such as flood, landslide, and earthquake and tsunami, approximately 1/3 of the national territory of Japan is disaster-prone area. And there, 3/4 of the national population is living in this disaster-prone area. So our population, the national territory of Japan is always have to tackle with the challenge of the national disaster. Then another important issue that we have to understand is that aging infrastructure. Because most of the infrastructure that we have and that we are using at present is prepared or developed at the time of rapid economic growth days. I mean, in the 1960s or 1970s. Then naturally, those infrastructure equipped around that time have to be renovated. For example, in the year of March 2023, the approximately 43% of the highway bridge have to be renovated, and tunnels 34%, and the river administrative facilities 43%, or harbor quays also shows 32%. Then please think about our demographical trend. Our population is now decreasing. It means that our tax income is also decreasing. However, we have to prepare the cost for renovating those infrastructure. So we are now in this severe situation. So when you visit Japan, please be careful. The 40% of the highway bridge may be fall down. Japan is in such a dangerous situation. Please be careful. But anyway, please consider and please understand this severe situation that we have in the national territory of Japan. Then we'd like to see, or we'd like to review the land use regulation system of Japan. If you are familiar to the urban planning system of Japan, you may know city planning or city planning law that was enacted in 1968 that I am talking about later on. But that city planning law or urban planning system is actually a part of land use regulation system that we have in Japan. Actually, we have two tiers of the land use regulation system. The first tier is called 5 areas under the National Land Use Planning System enacted in 1974. In this National Land Use Planning System, the national territory of Japan is divided into 5 areas named urban area, agricultural area, forest area, natural park area, natural conservation area, And this is the first tier. And in different areas, different laws are applied. This is the second tier of the land use regulation system. I mean, for the urban area, city planning law is applied. Then, in agricultural area, law of arrangement on agriculture promotion areas are applied. Forest area, forest law, natural park area, natural park law, natural conservation area, natural conservation law, or something like this. So, then these 5 areas are designated under the designated as basic land use plan prepared by the prefecture government. If you don't know about the governmental system of Japan, we also have 3 tiers of the government: national government and prefecture government and city, town, or village government. Like pemerintah pusat dan pemerintah provinsi dan kota dan kabupaten in Indonesia. We also have the same structure of the local government. Then this basic land use plan is prepared by the prefecture government, hierarchy of the local government. This is one of the case of the basic land use plan prepared by the Saitama Prefecture government, the suburban area of metropolitan Tokyo. In this way, the 5 area is designated in their plan. However, when we carefully look at this basic land use plan, in some area, for example, this is the urban area. This is the urban area. However, the forest area is also duplicatedly designated, like this. Then we also have agricultural area here. I mean, in the several area, the different land use regulation is designated, duplicatedly designated in the basic land use plan. This is one of the challenge for the Japan's land use planning system. For example, when we look at the trend of the basic land use, the designation of the 5 area in Japan, totally the urban area is designated for designated 27.4%. Naturally, in the metropolitan areas, has 52.9% for urban area, and in the regional cities, 23.1% for the urban area. Then, when we calculate all those 5, or when we sum up all those 5 different areas, the total area of the designated 5 area count up to approximately 60,000 hectares, larger than the total area of the national territory. We have this kind of large duplicated designated area under the national land use planning system. Then here the point is why this kind of duplication occurs. This is because this kind of duplication can be observed particularly in the suburban area of the large cities, such as metropolitan areas of Tokyo, Nagoya, Osaka. Because, at the time of designation in the 1970s, that was a time of population increasing era. So, even if at that time, the land was used for the farming or paddy field, the agricultural use, that area would be included in the urban area in the future. So those areas that has a potential to be urbanized was designated as agricultural area or forest area, and at the same time urban area as well. Because I am talking about later, for the urban area, city planning law is applied. So when we like to make an organized urban development, we have to designate the future urbanized areas future urban area also should be included in the urban area. That's why this kind of duplication occurs indeed. Then now this is the depopulation era. Then usually, as I am talking about later, those duplicated areas are now in the depopulation period. So how to manage this urban area is a critical issue. Then, as I told, the city planning law is applied to the urban area designated by the designated under the National Land Use Planning System. Then the figure that you are looking at is the urban planning system under city planning law. Basically, once the city planning area is designated, we prepare the master plans. One is the master plan prepared by the prefecture government that covers whole the city planning area, because sometimes city planning area covers different or covers 2 or 3 or 4 several municipalities. So the prefecture government has to coordinate the activities of the municipal government. So firstly, the prefecture government prepare the master plan for the city planning area. Then according to the master plan for the city planning area, the municipal government prepare the master plan for the area, for the municipal areas. Then, in order to realize the master plan that shows the future direction of the urban development, we have tools. So we have 3 kinds of tools. The first tool is land use regulation that we are going to learn today. And urban facilities, this is almost the same as infrastructure development. And also urban development projects that fosters the redevelopment or land readjustment project is also set as a kind of tool to realize the master plan. Then, in addition to that, we also have a kind of monitoring system for the individual construction activities or individual development activities, such as land development permission or building confirmation or something. Actually, the urban planning system of Japan is a kind of a mixture of different countries. The urban planning system of different countries. For example, the master planning system is influenced by the British master planning system, and the land use regulation, particularly zoning regulation, is influenced by the United States, and land development permission is influenced by the British planning system, and the district plan and the land readjustment project is influenced by the German urban development, influenced by the German planning system, actually. Then, among this urban planning system, we are focusing on the city plan designation of city planning area and those land use regulations today. Then, when the city planning area is designated, the urban planning area is divided into 2 categories of the areas. This is called the area division. The one category is urbanization promotion area, where development activities, urban development is promoted. And on the other hand, the urbanization control area is also designated, where the development activity is not permitted, but in principle. So in this way, in Japanese urban planning system, in short, we have this kind of demarcation of the development area and non-development area. This is one of the characteristics of the urban planning system, or land, as well as the land use regulation of the urban area of Japan. Then, for the urbanization promotion area, detailed land use zone is designated. We have actually 13 categories of land use zone, like this. And among these 13 categories, the 8 land use zones are for the residential use. 8 for residential, and 2 for commercial, and 3 for commercial, and 3 for industrial areas. Then after this designation, the land use zone, the buildings that is allowed to be built is decided. For example, in the residential areas, the houses or kindergartens or schools or shrine or churches are allowed to be built. On the other hand, factories or karaoke box that we are enjoying is not allowed for the residential area or like this. Then, according to this building use, the floor area ratio and the building coverage ratio regulation is also designated for each categories of the land use. You may have different numbers for the different numbers for one categories of land use. For example, in this category 1 exclusively low-rise residential areas, we can have a maximum floor area ratio of 50, 60, 80, 100, 150, and 200 or something. This number can be chosen by the municipality government. So here the point is the capacity of the municipal government, I mean the local government, is very important, becomes very important, because they have to judge which area should be which floor area ratio, or which area should be which building coverage ratio, or something. In this way, according to the land use zone, the building use and the floor area ratio and the building coverage ratio is designated. Then all is written in Japanese, but land use zone is not limited to that zoning control. We have these categories of the special land use zone. Then here the point is that municipality government will decide which land use zone should be applied for the areas that they have. Here again, the institutional capacity of the municipality government is very important to decide the land use zones, because we have this kind of very complex land use zones. Then let me talk about that. Let me talk about the challenge of the land use management and the infrastructure development. For example, this is one of the example of city planning map. Then you can see this line, this red line. Can you see this red line? This red line is illustrated over the existing houses. Actually, this line shows the planning road, but actually we have already there are already houses over this planning road. In this case, actually this is the photo of the red line area. In this case, we have to wait for the area to become a vacant land. Actually. So we have to wait and wait and wait until all the land is cleared. In this way, for some of the planning road takes very long time to be completed. Maybe in Indonesia too, you also have this kind of similar kind of experience. For example, just after the World War II, for the reconstruction of the city of Tokyo, the metropolitan government, together with the central government of Japan, planned 8 ring roads for the city of Tokyo. However, the ring road number 2, for example, was just completed several years ago. I mean, the 70 years after the World War II. This is one of the case example that shows how long this kind of infrastructure development, particularly road development, take time or something. This is also one case. And for the urban development project in the city planning system of Japan City Planning System, land readjustment project, and urban redevelopment project, and other methods are designated in the planning system. And particularly among those 2 urban development projects, land readjustment project is frequently used. For example, at the time of reconstruction from the Great Kanto earthquake that we had 100 years ago, actually at that time, approximately 43% of the Tokyo metropolitan central area of Tokyo was burnt down. Then for this reconstruction, the land readjustment project was largely implemented like this, like this, like this. Then, after the reconstruction from the World War II, actually this map shows the burnt down area during the World War II, and most of the central area of Tokyo was burnt down during the World War II, indeed. At the time of reconstruction, the land readjustment project was largely implemented. Then not only Tokyo metropolitan area, but also, for example, the tsunami that we had for the Tohoku area, at that time too, land readjustment project was largely implemented for the reconstruction. So we sometimes call land readjustment project a kind of mother of urban development in Japan. Then considering those land use management system of Japan, I'd like to introduce the recent urban challenges, particularly with special focus on metropolitan Tokyo areas. First big challenge is neoliberalization of the urban planning system and the redevelopment and emerging gentrification issues. As you may know, the urban planning system has been deregulated toward the neoliberalization, particularly after the late 1980s, influenced by the international environment such as the Reaganomics or Thatcherism. The Japan's urban planning system was also deregulated. Not only this kind of deregulation is not an experience of Tokyo, but also in Bangkok too, and in Jakarta too. For example, in the case of Jakarta or Indonesia, as far as I know, the deregulation package in 1992 under Suharto administration was a kind of trigger for the deregulation or the deregulation of the urban planning system, as far as I know, as I understand. Not only Jakarta, but also Bangkok or Mumbai, also deregulation has been implemented for the neoliberalization. Then look back to the experience of Japan. In the case of Japan, in the early 2000s, under the Prime Minister Koizumi's administration, the urban renaissance strategy was implemented, under which the development project, mainly implemented by the private sector, was encouraged. Then the priority urban development areas were designated from Sapporo till Kyushu, Fukuoka, or Kita-Kyushu, all over Japan, of course, including Tokyo metropolitan areas. Then, in Tokyo metropolitan areas, the priority development areas or special areas to encourage the development project by the private sectors were designated like this. Then, for example, this kind of redevelopment project was implemented. This is one of the case of Okawabata area of Tokyo, where there used to be manufacturing factories. Those manufacturing factory area, I mean, a kind of a brownfield area, was redeveloped to this kind of residential, high-class residential area. According to some rumor, the several very famous TV stars were living in this high-rise residential area, actually. Then, particularly after 2000, not only Okawabata area, but in the central area of Tokyo, redevelopment project was largely implemented. This map shows the skyscrapers in Chiyoda City, I mean, that is located in the central area of Tokyo, because this is Imperial Palace and this is Tokyo Station. And the buildings with red color means that those buildings that was built from the year of 2002 till 2012. It means that they are the buildings that was built after the Prime Minister Koizumi's urban renaissance strategy. So clearly we can see that more and more buildings or more and more skyscrapers has been built after or since after the urban regeneration project. Then, for example, in Shibuya area, one of the sub-center of the Tokyo series of urban redevelopment project is now being implemented. Then we don't have clear evidence so far, but several gentrification issues will occur. This is a big concern in those areas. The second challenge for the urban planning of Japan, I'd like to highlight the peri-urban land use control, particularly according to the area division. This is a picture of a regional city named Matsuyama. And this is a picture of a suburban area of metropolitan Tokyo. Actually, this is a suburban area where which is designated as urbanization control area, where basically development project was not permitted, is not permitted. However, we can observe this kind of piecemeal residential development. As you can see, the photo above is the suburban area of Jakarta. Like this, we are also having this kind of suburban piecemeal residential development. Then here the point is how to control this peri-urban area. Then please look at this photo, this urban planning map and the aerial photo. This one. This is a national road. And we can say this is a national road. And actually, the left side of this national road is urbanization control area. Yes. And development activities is not prohibited. But actually, we have this kind of residential areas, even in this urbanization control areas. This is one of the one case from the suburban area of Tokyo Metropolitan. But when we look at the number of development permission that is issued for that has been issued since 1970 till present. Sorry, this is Japanese year. The number of the development permission that is issued for urbanization promotion area, where the development activity is permitted, and when we compare this number with urbanization control area, we can clearly see that almost the same number of the development permission is issued for the urbanization control area. Although any development activity is not permitted for the urbanization control area. This is one of the reasons why we can't control the peri-urban development areas. Then here we should know why this area is designated. Again, let's go back to this case. Why this area? This area is designated as urbanization control area. We can easily understand when we see a kind of hazard map, flood expectation. Clearly, we can see that in this area is a kind of flood-prone area. That's why it is designated as urbanization control area. So under the more frequent and severe rainfall situation at present, we have to strictly implement this kind of area division, particularly considering this flooding event or disaster from a viewpoint of disaster prevention. Then actually, the third issue that I like to highlight is mainstreaming natural disaster prevention. Actually, the central government of Japan is now trying the institutional reform to address the natural disaster. Before, it is quite difficult to relocate the settlement or houses that is located in the disaster-prone area. But now it's that kind of condition for the relocation is gradually deregulated if that settlement or houses are located in a disaster-prone area. But this is now still trial and error situation. But anyway, we are trying to make it. We are trying to make it realized. Then, the time is very limited, but in this situation, these days, green infrastructure is being focused on in the urban development as well. For example, in the case of Futako Tamagawa district, together with the urban development project implemented by a private company named Tokyu Corporation, one of the biggest railway company. The green infrastructures named the Futako Tamagawa Park and the river levee construction was implemented at one time. In this way, gradually, the green infrastructure is being mainstreamed in the urban development of Japan as well. Then the fourth issues that we are tackling at present is aging society. I told that at the present, Tokyo metropolitan area is accepting the migration from outside. But this is just a present condition. In in the coming decades, the population of Tokyo metropolitan area is also expected to decrease. This is the population forecast of 2050. Then naturally the area with blue color shows the decreasing population. Then even in Tokyo metropolitan area, particularly in the suburban area, the population decrease will become more serious than present. Then naturally in those areas, the older people are living in the suburban area. Then here, the point is why in the suburban area, the population will decrease and the aging population will increase, because those areas were developed at the time of rapid urbanization. More and more residential areas were developed in 1970s or 80s or sometimes 60s. Then they got old at this present. Then at present, some of the public houses were destroyed due to this depopulation era. Then lastly, I'd like to highlight the most important, last but not least, the most important challenge and most important and long challenge for Tokyo metropolitan is that the densely built areas. We also have densely built areas like Indonesia's Kampung, actually. This is one of the densely populated areas. In Tokyo metropolitan area, this is the central area of Tokyo with Imperial Palace. There is a lot of densely populated area, particularly approximately 5 to 10 kilometers from the city center area, like a belt. This area was actually formed at the time of rapid economic growth days, 1960s or 1970s. This area used to be a peri-urban area. So those peri-urban area was developed. Then now it becomes a densely populated area. Actually, my house is located around here. I'm also living in this kind of densely populated area. Then in these areas, why this densely populated area is serious at present? Because when we consider the disaster risk, the densely built area is seriously disaster-prone area. This map shows the densely populated relationship between densely populated area and the disaster risk. So we can clearly see that the densely populated area is higher disaster risk areas. Then of course, again, the land readjustment project is being implemented to solve the issue of densely populated area. But as you know, in order to implement the land readjustment project, we need a kind of agreement among the residents or landowners or tenants. So usually those areas that can be dissolved by the land readjustment project is very limited. The majority of the area is still in the densely built situation like this or like this. Then finally, I'd like to highlight the important message from my presentation. The photo that you are looking at shows the densely populated area of Tokyo. Then please look at this photograph. This is one kampung or densely populated area of Jakarta. Then let's compare the physical condition of those densely populated areas. Of course, the socio-economical situation of Jakarta and Tokyo would be different. For example, in Japan, we have less Muslim people or less Muslim people or something. But when we carefully observe the physical environment of those two areas, we can clearly see the common commonality or a common future between those two densely populated areas. And this is not a phenomena, this is not an observation in Jakarta and Tokyo, but also when we compare the densely populated area of Jakarta, Tokyo, together with Accra, the capital of Ghana in African region, and densely populated area of Medellin, the economic center of country of Colombia in Latin American region, we can see a lot of commonality. So here the point is our urban challenge is not limited to the challenge of your city, or in short, the challenge of so-called rapid is not limited to your country, but also to all the cities, regardless of the definition of the developed country and developing countries. And from this viewpoint, the most important viewpoint that we should have is the urban challenge is a kind of planetary challenge for all the cities all over the world. So the issues that are raised and the challenges that we have in the land management system of Japan is also a common challenge to the Indonesia's Tata system as well. So I do hope that throughout this seminar, we can, or the discussion session or question and answer session, we can share the experience between the Indonesia's Tata and Japan's land use management system. Sorry, the time is very limited. So this is all the topic. Actually, I prepared for this presentation, but my explanation would be too short. So I'd like to accept any kind of question in this in the coming discussion and question and answer session. Thank you very much once again for this opportunity to present the situation of Japan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Shima, for your presentation. And well, frankly speaking, I cannot highlight many things on your presentation. But Bapak Ibu sekalian, para peserta seminar yang saya hormati, let me summarize a little bit in bahasa Indonesia, bahwa sebagian dari presentasi Profesor Shima tadi, bahwa pada prinsipnya di Jepang juga memang dibagi perspektif kewilayahan itu ke dalam 5 area utama, yaitu urban area, agricultural area, forest area, kemudian ada natural park area, kemudian ada natural conservation area. Dan disampaikan juga bahwa perencanaan tata ruang atau basic land use plan juga disusun berdasarkan disusun oleh pemerintah daerah yang disebut di sini sebagai prepared by prefectural government. Jadi kurang lebih sama lah dengan apa yang dilakukan di Indonesia, di mana kita terdapat RDTR dan RDR. Kopi rempah kopi yang meliputi perspektif provinsi maupun kabupaten kota. Nah, Profesor Shima juga berharap bahwa di dalam berkaitan dengan bagian terakhir dari foto-foto yang disajikan tadi, kita bisa share pengalaman di dalam konteks pengendalian daripada pemanfaatan ruang yang muncul dan ada di berbagai negara, terutama pada bagian yang dihuni oleh penduduk yang padat. Nah, untuk itu semua, saya berharap teman-teman para peserta seminar yang ingin mengajukan pertanyaan bisa raise hand terlebih dahulu untuk kita lihat. Jika ada yang ingin bertanya, kami persilahkan. Satu dari Mbak Lulu Bita.
Oke,
Silakan.
Terima kasih Pak Arwin. Thank you for Professor for the interesting presentation. My name is Ludita and I want to ask some question. You mentioned in your presentation that in Japan divide into two urbanization system. The first is developed that promoted and developed not permitted. And I just want to ask, did you ever, following the experience in Japan, did you ever to found the building house they built in another zone urban land use? I mean, did you ever to found some house found in the agricultural zone? If yeah, is any punishment for it? And if no, how to government to prevent this situation?
Yeah. Look, actually, honestly speaking, this, thank you very much for the question, Ludik. Honestly speaking, this area division system was introduced at the time of enactment of city planning law in the year of 1968. At that time, unfortunately, even if that area is urbanization control area, several settlements existed. So, for example, when they like to extend their house or when they like to prepare the house of the children, we cannot deny that kind of request. So then, in order to support those existing settlements in the urbanization control area, we have a special regulation that if 50 houses are already existed, they can build houses more than that.
Okay.
So it's not actually punished. Of course, if there is no existing settlement there, the new development is not permitted. But if there is existing settlement, we cannot deny it because of that regulation indeed. That's why I use the word development is not permitted in principle.
Yes. Then, because a lot the situation is found in Indonesia.
Yeah, exactly.
And can I ask the second question, Professor?
Yeah.
Because I'm curious about the monitoring of the change of the urban planning, because it's mean the Japan also conduct some change detection for it. Change detection for the urban zones, urban plannings, because every year the urban zone is changed because the population also change. And can I know the method to conduct the change detection in Japan? Because I also imagine that Japan have high buildings. That means they should to considering the height of the change, the height of building also is conducted by directly from the fields, or also with the satellite image, or also on the photogrammetry.
Gallery.
Talking about the revision of the land use, basically the municipality government or city government, town city government is in charge of this revision. Approximately every 5 years, they have to revise the land use zones. Then, of course, the process of revision, a kind of participatory approach, was taken. For example, a draft land use zones are opened to the public. In this way, this process is opened. Then, at the time of deregulation, actually, some of the private developers who like to make a large-scale redevelopment project can also propose that revision these days. Then usually those developers are trying to make that kind of large-scale redevelopment project. They are proposing a higher floor area ratios, higher volume of the buildings. Then talking about the basic principle of the redevelopment project of Japan Solid. Because this kind of urban development projects that you are looking at, that includes urban redevelopment project, is a kind of tool to realize the future image of the master plan. So basically, those who is expected to realize the master plan in a fast way, they can have a bonus. So it means that for those who like to implement urban redevelopment project, the government provides some incentive for floor area lessons.
Okay.
But then, in addition to that, in the urban redevelopment project, they are providing some parks or some roads, firstly built by private sector and transferred to the public sector or governmental sector. Then they can have a bonus of the floor area. That's why we have some skyscrapers, even in among the densely populated area or something. Yeah, just recently, several weeks ago, one redevelopment project was completed with Japan's highest building of 330 meters in the central area of Tokyo, actually.
Okay, I see.
But, yeah, in this way, we have this kind of we have this kind of deregulation system for the urban planning. But let me comment over the Tata system of Indonesia. I also know, I also have several knowledge about Tata and see some Tata document. But I'm afraid that I could not understand where is the city area and where is not the city area or something. In that sense, this kind of area division system, although we have much difficulty, can be one of a good option for one of a good, one of my recommendation for the Indonesia's Tata system, in short.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the answer, Professor.
Sorry, my answer is not very clear, but hope it was.
It's fine.
Lulu,
Yeah.
is it enough?
It's enough.
Yeah, we still have one more participant who raised hand in the Zoom. That is Mr. Hadi Arnowo. Please, Mr. Hadi.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Arwin. I want to introduce myself. My name is Hadi Arnowo. I'm a lecturer in PPSDM. I want to ask you, Mr. Sima, about the land use conversion, especially in agriculture land. In Japan, you have many growth city, many modern city, and you can let the development in many cities, but you still maintain, you still keep the agriculture land. So how do you prevent your agriculture land from the convention? Because I still see the agriculture, especially in many paddy fields.
Yes.
You still have maintained that those fields. So how is the regulation about the keeping agricultural land from the conversion? That's my question. Thank you, Mr. Sima.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bapak Hadi Arnowo.
Yes.
Actually, today I am talking about the urban area where the city planning law is applied. But under these 5 areas, agricultural area is also designated, mainly for the agricultural land. Then, in those agricultural area, law of the arrangement on agricultural promotion area is applied. Then, under this law, we have agricultural promotion area, where the land use conversion from agriculture to urban is prohibited. In this way, we are trying to preserve the agricultural land conversion. Then, but yeah. Once that area, agricultural land, is designated as agricultural promotion areas, the land conversion is not allowed, basically. But that kind of, again, this is a basic principle. But this kind of 5 areas is also being revised every 5 years. And sometimes, as I told, the agricultural area and city urban area is duplicatedly designated. So if that area is duplicatedly designated, so even if that area is designated as agricultural promotion areas, sometimes urban development can be allowed. Because in that duplicated areas, both laws, both agricultural law and city planning law is applied. Then when they apply the city planning law, that area is allowed to be developed in the urban use. We have that complexity, particularly in the peri-urban areas. That's why we have, sorry. That's why we have this kind of area. This kind of area, like Jakarta suburbs. But anyhow, the point is that basically we have some land use zones to preserve the agricultural areas. Do you hit the point?
Okay, that's okay. I understand. That's my point. Okay, thank you.
We have one more participant to ask questions here verbally. Mas Willy, are you ready, Mas Willy?
Can you hear me, Sensei? Hello, konnichiwa.
Hi, konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa, Sensei. So I would like to ask about the system of cities or urban hierarchical system. So currently the Directorate General of Spatial Planning is in the process of updating or revising the National Spatial Plan. And in our national plan, we have something called a hierarchical urban system. This hierarchical urban system consists of national activity centers and regional activity centers and local activity centers. So I want to ask, is the National Spatial Plan of Japan determines these hierarchical points to plan the distribution of regional growth centers? So how to decide the hierarchy? Maybe this is my question, Sensei. Thank you.
Okay. Actually, in the National Land Use Planning System, this National Land Use Planning System designates just a land use, not the hierarchy of the cities or regions. Just try to designate the land use. Then, in order to decide, also, in addition to this National Land Planning System, we have Comprehensive Development Plan, like LPJMN of Japan. In that system, we have a kind of hierarchy of a system of the cities or something. But actually, we call it a Comprehensive National Development Plan of Japan. We have actually 8 Comprehensive National Development Plans since the World War II. Since 1962, we have 8 development plans. But at present, we don't have that kind of hierarchy. The plan does not decide that hierarchy. In the past, the first national development plan or second development plan days that was designated in 1960s or 70s, the systems of the cities were designated in the plan. But at present, we don't have that hierarchy. Rather than the horizontal network is much more focused in the National Development Plan. So we don't have that kind of hierarchy. But that's the actual situation of Japan.
Thank you, Sensei. So, for National Spatial Plan of Japan, only National Land Use Plan. How about the structure? Like, so we have like a structure plan.
Maybe the relationship between Comprehensive National Development Plan of Japan and the National Land Use Planning System of Japan is the same system, same relationship between LPJPN and Tata Ruang Wilayah Nasional. Maybe the relationship is the same, but the contents is different. As far as in my understanding, in Tata Ruang Wilayah Nasional, you have the system of cities or something.
Yes.
But that kind of system of the cities are, in the case of Japan, that kind of system of cities is not designated in National Land Use System, but in the Comprehensive Development Plan.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you so much.
Because the National Land Use System designates only the land use, not the system of cities. Then the National Land Use System supports the systems of the cities that is designated in the Comprehensive Development Plan.
Okay, thank you so much, Sensei.
Oke, Mas Willy cukup?
Ya, cukup, Pak.
Okay. Professor Shiba, we have several questions through the pigeonholes, and I will read the top questions. Perhaps you can answer it, or am I invite Mas Hari, Pak Hari yang mau bertanya, ingin memperjelas pertanyaannya lewat pigeonhole. The person is not replying. So let me just read the question.
Yeah.
How the Japanese government controls land arrangement? How the Japanese government controls land arrangement after an earthquake, and how to control land arrangement in basement areas, and why not permitted if there is urbanization in the city areas?
Let me talk about the experience of 2 earthquakes that we had in Tohoku, firstly, with tsunami. In the case of Tohoku earthquake that we had with big tsunami, those areas are depopulated areas. So the kind of densely populated area did not exist actually. So that kind of control issue was not big issue. But at the time of Great Hanshin earthquake that we had in 1995, that hit the central area of Kobe city, the adjacent the Kobe city and Osaka city. At that time, the more serious is because of the fire after the earthquake. The reconstruction of the building or reconstruction of the houses rather than the land issue was critical. So the kind of issue that you raised was not did not consider. So if we of course we can talk about more disaster event, but that's too long ago. For example, 100 years ago or something. Fortunately, the earthquake that hit the major metropolitan area was the one we had in 1995 only. Before that, if you talk about the disaster events before that, it's 100 years ago. So we don't have so far that kind of serious issue indeed. Sorry, my answer is not very clear.
Basement area.
Eh?
The next part of the question is about the basement area. I mean, underground buildings, the use, how to control that.
Basement area.
Yes.
Yeah, basically the basement area control, the basic control tool of the buildings, including the underground area, is controlled by the in the urban area, controlled by these land use zones. Of course, naturally, the floor area ratio or designated floor area ratio includes the basement areas. And then talking about the basement areas, those underground area just below the national land, such as national road or railways, should be kept for the infrastructure, such as the gas pipe or electricity pipe or subway station or something. All the basement areas that the private sector can use is those lands under the private lands only. But this would be the main control tool for the underground area. But those areas below several meters, as far as I remember, 30 meters or 50 meters or something, should be kept for the basic infrastructure. For example, as I told, at the time of reconstruction from the World War II, we planned the ring road, 8 ring road. But that ring road project was not implemented so far. Then we are now planning the very underground ring road in the suburban area of Tokyo. Approximately, I think, 30 meters or 50 meters below the ground level. The new ring road is now planned and constructed. Indeed.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Professor Shima. I think it's 2:00 p.m. already, and our time is up. Professor De Vries is waiting for the next session, so I, on behalf of the all participants of the seminar, I thank you very much for your presentation and answer to the questions. Thank you, and we will continue to the next session. Thank you very much, Professor Shima.
Thank you very much. And actually, I have passed my presentation material to the organizing committee, so I can share. You can. That can be shared for everyone, so please make use of that material. And if you have some question, please do not hesitate to contact me by the email or through the organizing committee. Thank you very much, Father.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. See you in the next sessions.
Thank you very much.
All right. Baik, Bapak Ibu sekalian, para peserta seminar, kita akan segera bergeser ke sesi berikutnya karena waktu sudah menunjukkan pukul 14 lewat beberapa menit. Kita ngecek dulu, Professor De Vries, are you on the forum?
Yes, yeah. I'm here. I hope you can hear me.
All right. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Before we start, let me introduce you to the participants by reading a bit of your CV that was sent to me yesterday. Bapak Ibu sekalian, sesi kita berikutnya akan diisi oleh Profesor Dr. Walter Timo de Vries, Profesor di bidang Land Management pada Technical University of Munich, School of Engineering and Design. Profesor de Vries meneliti dalam bidang antara lain Smart and Responsible Land Management, Urban and Rural Development, Public Restriction Cadastres, dan Capacity Development for Land Policies. Profesor de Vries juga saat ini adalah anggota German Geodetic Commission and Bayern Academy of Rural Space. Kemudian beliau adalah Direktur Program Master dan PhD pada Technical University of Munich, TUM, dan dalam bidang Land Management dan Land Tenure. Beliau juga adalah Dekan Program Studi Geodesi dan Geoinformatika, serta Koordinator Akademik untuk TUM Afrika. Beliau bekerja di berbagai proyek internasional di Asia, Afrika, dan Amerika Selatan dengan UNITAR di Jenewa hingga 1994 dan dengan International Institute for Geoinformation Science and Earth Observation (ITC) di University of Twente tahun 94 sampai 2015 dan sejumlah aktivitas lain serta posisi beliau. Beberapa publikasi yang bisa saya sebutkan antara lain Economic versus Social Values in Land and Property Management, Two Sides of the Same Coin, Responsible Land Management, Concept and Application in a Territorial Rural Context, dan seterusnya. Banyak sekali publikasi yang sudah dihasilkan oleh Profesor de Vries, dan kita akan mendengarkan presentasi dari beliau hari ini yang akan disampaikan selama kurang lebih 45 menit dan selanjutnya akan dilanjutkan dengan sesi tanya jawab. Professor de Vries, are you ready with your presentation?
Yes.
Okay. As we agreed, our time will be until 3:15. Approximately, and I provide two ways of question and answer later on. First, of course, I will prioritize those who will ask question verbally, and then we also provide pigeonhole links in case some participant will ask question in written form, and we will try to reply of the all question is if possible, if time is still enough. Bapak Ibu sekalian, mari kita sambut Profesor Walter Timo de Vries dari TUM School of Engineering and Design. Professor de Vries, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for the invitation. I will share my screen so that I can present it then. I hope you see that.
The voice is not clear.
The voice is clear. Okay. Speak up a little bit.
Professor de Vries, your voice is not quite clear for us. Perhaps if you are using two devices, maybe the other one can be muted or...
I am using only one device, so this is the only device I have.
The voice is not very clear, so we understand.
Is it breaking up? And then what I can do?
Your voice is waving here.
Okay. Let me see. Is it better now?
It's better. It's better.
Better like this. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
I hope it stays like this. Sorry for that. Was not aware of that. You can see the slides as well, just to confirm that. Good.
Very well.
Yes, and good. I'm going to talk about how spatial planning and land management occurs in Germany. When I compare that to what I've just listened to in Japan, Germany is still a very rural nation as compared to Japan. And that makes it perhaps a little bit different, but there's also similarities. So I'll talk about 4 issues. So one is the general German planning system, then some basic spatial planning principles. Then I talk specifically about rural planning and the role of the land consolidation law in that. And finally, I end up with village renewal and integrated rural development. So how do we integrate multiple goals and laws at the same time for planning? First of all, the institutional system. The institutional system is a bit complex in the sense that Germany is a federal state, which means that there are individual states which are fairly autonomous, and they are united in the Federation of Germany. And that also means that the laws and the legislations are different per state in each of the German states. Nevertheless, Germany has to adhere to a central constitution, and even you could say it has to adhere to European laws. Many of the European laws are obligatory for Germany, so they have to adapt their individual laws, but the central law is the constitution. Then every state has its own constitution. And then when we go to the spatial planning issues, there is first of all the civil code, the building code. Then there are specific regulations, translations of the various acts and codes, such as the building use regulation or the valuation regulation. And then it goes to the execution part, where you can actually develop building plans or land development plans or land consolidation plans, etc., depending on what sort of area you're working at. Now, this is a sort of general background, and we can look to a number of issues in particular with regards to spatial planning. There's many things in the land, in the constitution of the country, but specifically for spatial planning, I'll zoom into a number of issues. First of all, the constitution itself. There you see that property in itself and also inheritance of property is regulated. Not just regulated, it is also guaranteed. So individual property is considered very important in Germany and is also at always in many ways protected. Nevertheless, this property comes with a social obligation. You can have individual property, but it should also serve the common good. So there are 2 sides of the coins of individual property. You should not bother your neighbor, for example, and you should also take care of your neighborhood if you have individual property. And that's an important principle as well. Then what comes with property is also the possibility of the government to expropriate you. But that is not a common feature. It is not that for spatial planning, often expropriation is used to relocate people or to evict people, because property is guaranteed by the state. So there must be a very good reason of public concern to expropriate someone, given that property is guaranteed. So it is usually an exception in spatial planning. The social obligation of ownership, that is also considered a fundamental principle. It should serve also the common good or the common interest. And that depends, of course, of how that is defined and also how local communities define the social interest. Nevertheless, it should be taken into account also if the property is rented out, for example. Those obligations also apply to renters of property. So both land, leasehold land, as well as individual property like houses or apartments. And this is usually also comes back in rental or leasehold contracts. Now, for the actual construction, there is the so-called building code, which is very important. And that code regulates many things. And Germany is a country that is very proud of regulations, I can say, and also tries to adhere to the regulations as much as possible. So this Baugesetzbuch, the building code, regulates many things that relate to spatial planning. Construction, how is it done? How do you prepare master plans? How do you prepare land use plans, development plans? How do you divide space or divide parcels, etc.? And also issues like expropriation or revitalization of urban land in most cases are regulated. And last but not least, also how can you rent or rent out a certain apartment or a certain piece of land? All those things are heavily regulated, and you could say you simply follow the law if you want to do spatial planning. It is not as easy as that, of course, but the law is there. Let me put it like that. What is also important in the civil code, I guess that also relates to spatial planning and to property. The owner of the property can basically do what he or she wants with that property and can also exclude others from that. So that goes back to this principle of the highest guarantee for individual property. Nevertheless, the social obligation is specified here as well. You may not harm somebody or put somebody else in danger because of your execution of your ownership. And also, if there is a public need, then the government may also ask you or force you to get out of your property. For example, if you put yourself in danger or if there is a danger of fire or some emergency. So this also states that although property is highly guaranteed, there may be circumstances where you can invade this property to that extent. What is furthermore important is inheritance rights. That is not very different from Indonesia. You can inherit property, and therefore also in the planning you have to take into account this inheritance rules. So what is then more detailed in spatial planning, and I'm still talking about the sort of institutional context, besides the basic principle of guaranteeing of property, there's also the principle of allocation of rights or devolvement of rights to municipalities. They have the role to make spatial plans within their municipalities, so that is defined in the Constitution. There is the Spatial Planning Act, which is a federal law, which applies for the whole country, and that determines how you actually have to do spatial planning in the whole country. And there may be certain regulations in particular states, but Raumordnungsgesetz, Spatial Planning Act, regulates spatial planning for the entire country. And as said, there is the Baugesetz, the building code, that regulates how can you actually build individual houses or apartments. So there, the guidelines are fairly well described, and it is, as said, per state, sometimes different for specific building regulations or for the specific execution. In Munich, for example, there is a regulation that you cannot build any house or any apartment higher than the Frauenkirche, a church in the center of Munich, because otherwise that would disturb the urban landscape. So that is a regulation that was executed specifically for Munich. So there you see some diversion of the official building code, or maybe the discretionary space that you have under this building code. Now, what sort of issues of spatial planning is Germany actually faced with? And I would say many of those issues are very similar to what we've heard in Japan, except perhaps for the issues of earthquakes and tsunamis or major disasters. But we also see a lot of demographic changes, similar like Japan and Germany. We are obviously affected by climate change. There is the turnaround in energy policy. Germany wants to have more green energy for the entire country. There is a fundamental issue of public participation that has always been very strong in Germany, but we see also element that it's maybe declining. Financial situation becomes more problematic for local municipalities that have a major responsibility. And there are some other problems which you also see in other countries. So that is the general context out of which spatial planning is emerging. Germany is not an island state. It is actually in the center of Europe. So anything that happens in Europe will affect Germany immediately. Here you see, for example, how transportation routes and are being affected. Germany is basically in the center of Europe and connecting Eastern and Western Europe to a large extent. And that also affects how Germany needs to plan their space. Nevertheless, Germany is a very rural country, surprisingly. These are some older figures and an older map, but essentially it hasn't changed much since about 20 years. There are a number of major urban centers, and everything in between is either rural or is simply open space. So that means for spatial planning that we're dealing with quite a lot of open space and maybe a difference between the urban or the urbanized or even the metropolitan development as opposed to the rural development. And as rural space is actually the biggest part of the country, there is a lot of attention for rural development and rural spatial planning, maybe more so than for urban. Urban has although urban is very important because many people live there, but urban or rural still takes an important place in the bigger spatial planning discourses. We see also that institutionally there are lots of smaller municipalities. Germany currently has more than 13,000 municipalities. And if you know that municipalities take a leading role in spatial planning, in making the actual land use plans, then you also have to realize that if you make a national plan, it is quite hard to align that with 13,000 municipalities. So this is one of the major challenges for the spatial planners and also for the governments who are responsible for that. So what you see is that there is a constant adaptation from, let's say, principles that come from the federal level up to the local levels, and also from the local levels, a sort of countervailing influence who are saying, well, your plans are not executable, we have other priorities, and that goes back up to the federal level. So first to the regions and then to the states, but then up to the federal level. So we see this constant alignment and adaptations which are taking place in spatial planning executions. And here you see that in also figures, how many government institutions are really responsible for that spatial planning at the end of the day. Of course, the Federal Republic and then the states, but then we go into the regional and the sub-regional and the local levels. Then we're talking about many organizations with people and with also priorities that have to collaborate. And that is a major issue, in a way similar as in Indonesia with the different levels of administration. So how does that translate into real spatial plans? Now here you see that. What sort of spatial plans are being developed? At the federal level, we do have federal artifacts that need to be developed, such as motorways, highways, the famous Autobahn here in Germany, that crosses not only different municipalities, but that also crosses different states. And therefore, it becomes a federal issue. At state level, we have the basic principles as you can define, and I'll come back to that issue. What are those? That is then also translated in a state development plan, a regional plan, you could say, for the entire state. That is then translated again into regional planning policies. For example, the Bayern, the Bavarian regional policy. That is then translated into preparatory land use plans at the sub-regional level. And finally, we get at the municipal or at the county level, we get legally binding land use plans. And you see also what is then regulated at each of those respective plans, such as at higher levels, we have traffic plans, transportation plans, waste plans. And at lower level, we really speak about individual plots or individual buildings that are included in the planning. So we see that there is an institutional system. At the same time, there's also this influence from non-government actors. So, for example, the Bouwindustrieverband, which is an association of builders and developers, they obviously have an interest that houses are built, that roads are built, and they try to influence this whole planning process. And also the private sector in general, the consultants, the people that are interested in renting housing, the brokers, all of them try to influence where a particular house is being built, or where a particular road is being built, or where a particular green area is being protected. So we see that the spatial planning system in general is not just in practice the institutional framework, but it's also this complex of actors that try to influence the actual or the final regional or local or national plans. And that is something that is hidden in, if we simply present the framework, but that is, of course, happening in all sorts of ways. There's lots of influence from non-state actors in this process. Now, what are then the general planning principles? In Germany, I want to mention two fundamental principles. The first fundamental principle is the central place system. That is the idea that certain services in society must be available at particular levels. And there we make a differentiation between three types of central places: basic centers, middle order centers, and high order centers. And the idea is that a particular facility or service must be provided by the government through planning. You can think of these kind of services like retail services, doctor services, schools, train stations. They have to be available within a certain distance or within a certain time of how to get there. And if that is not available, then the spatial planning authority should make sure that that service is being provided, either by better transportation or by simply engaging the private sector or another government sector to ensure that that service is being provided. Then there are a set of concepts which are important at the national level for spatial planning. And that has been in place already for almost 20 years. The first is the growth and innovation should be equally distributed or fairly distributed throughout the entire country. That obviously has a history. Before we had West and Eastern Germany, and many of the services and the growth was primarily beneficial for the western part, or even the Ruhrgebiet, smaller parts, and the Munich part for the country. But then they came to the conclusion, no, these benefits of growth and innovation should be distributed throughout the country. And if that is not the case, then we should provide facilities to or plan for facilities that make this more equally and fairly distributed. A second principle is ensuring services of public interest. You can think of parks, event possibilities, universities, also that should be available throughout the country. It should not be such that certain regions benefit more or certain states benefit more from particular services of public interest. And the third principle is conservation of resources and shaping of cultural landscapes. Now, quickly about each of those basic principles, equal growth and innovation. This is a map that shows where is growth and innovation primarily taking place. And the idea behind this sort of abstract map is that we see certain empty spots, and can't we bring either new services in those empty spots or services which are somehow connected to the major spots of growth and innovation. We see a lot of growth and innovation in the western part of the country. That's the Ruhrgebiet, and in Berlin, perhaps, as a major center. Now, more people should have access to those services. So in between those metropolitan areas, we start to see new kinds of facilities, either in the form of new universities or more businesses which are being established, so that you get a more or less more equal and more fair distribution of those innovation drivers throughout the country. Also, one of the things that is necessary thereby is making sure that you keep on measuring how things are being developed. One of those measurement instruments is the Metropolitan Index, which makes use of various individual indices, such that you can also qualify and quantify how much is growth and innovation, how much is that really distributed, and is that more or less aligned throughout the entire country. For the distribution of public centers, here again, we make use of the central places concepts. So if you do a good measurement of those services, you can also check where do we have, where are we lacking certain services. So here we see the dots. What are the services, or what are the areas at risk? And where should we, at the national level, also intervene with our spatial planning activities? So measurement of what you actually aim for is very crucial there. For example, using the central places concept, how far does the population need to drive to a major center? How far is that? And there you can set certain standards, and if you don't reach those standards or norms, then there is a necessity to intervene with your spatial planning activities. So that's a general idea. You set certain standards, and then you evaluate structurally, are we reaching those standards? And here we see, for example, two of those measurement results, and this relates then to accessibility to major centers. How far is it for you to drive there, or how far is it for you to get there with public transport? And if you find that it takes more in this case than 60 minutes, for example, then there is a necessity to intervene. And you see there, for example, that in the eastern part of Germany, there is still a lot of red areas, which means that there's not a lot of public transport available in those areas. Now, there is a necessity to intervene with more public transport. That is what it basically means. Other interested areas, here we see also other standards to hospitals, for example. How far is it for you to get there, and can you get there with public means or with private transport? First, obviously per state, here are some results from the different states. The standards for North Rhine-Westphalia, which is in the Ruhrgebiet in the western part of Germany, it says you need to get to an ambulance needs to get to you within 5 to 8 minutes. And in Saxony, which is in the east, 12 minutes is considered acceptable. And in Bavaria, it's usually also 12 minutes. So these are standards that are interpreted differently per state, maybe also based on the resources that people have. The third principle is the principle of maintaining and conserving cultural landscapes. This is always a bit of an abstract, as it is very often with spatial planning, an abstract picture. But you see that you don't want to get away or get rid of the sort of identity of the landscape itself, how people identify with a particular area, because otherwise you run the risk that people lose the identity. They cannot associate themselves anymore with the area, and tourists don't see anymore the relevance or the specific nature of that area. So preservation of the landscape or restoration of the landscape is considered important. And here again, this picture shows where do we need to intervene? Where are the landscapes at risks, either because of urbanization or because of mining industry or because of climate change? And what is it that we need to do in those sort of areas? So again, you need to measure that with lots of indicators, for example, touristic attraction or landscape attraction, nature conservation value, ecological agriculture. These are all a bunch of indicators which allow you to translate these sort of basic principles into manageable planning objectives. Good. So what I just said also was that indeed Germany is an urbanized country, but most of the country is still rural. And for that reason, rural development is considered important for the development of the whole country. If the rural areas are left behind, then you don't meet any of those basic principles. You cannot have a sort of fair distribution of the benefits of the growth. You cannot maintain your landscapes, and you cannot maintain the access to all the services that you want to have. So for that reason, rural development is an important role. And what the objectives there therefore are for rural development agencies, usually under the ministry, there is an executive agency, agencies for rural development. They are responsible to maintain the security and the vitality of rural areas. First of all, they are also responsible to support agricultural and forestry development. There you need a lot of land. Agriculture and forestry are still major parts of the country. Essentially, 30 to 40% of the country is still forest in Germany, and some states even have 50 to 60% still being forest, meaning also forest land. And rural development agencies have that responsibility as well, to maintain also the forest areas. Then there is the protection of the cultural landscapes and basic foundations of life. And finally, realize public projects in an ownership-friendly manner. So do it together with the owners if you want to intervene, and make sure that they also agree to that. So the agencies are essentially responsible to develop projects that support the rural areas, and they can do that using the Land Consolidation Act. It sounds maybe a bit funny at first, because land consolidation is a very specific element to rearrange plots, but the Land Consolidation Act in Germany is quite broad. It does not only include the rearrangements of plots, and the redistribution of plots, it also deals with village renewal and village development. So it deals with the broader set of land management instruments. And in addition, the rural development agencies, they can provide subsidies or support local municipalities to gain subsidies, either for development of infrastructure or for village renewal or for village development. So they are also a facilitator for an intermediary for smaller rural municipalities to get things done. So not only to plan, but also to execute things. It's important to understand that the Land Consolidation Act has a long history in Germany. So originally, land consolidation was indeed to develop agriculture and to develop agricultural production and to improve it, to enhance it, to make it more efficient and effective. But gradually, people have come to realize that developing agriculture is not alone if you don't develop the entire region. So we see that also reflected in the Land Consolidation Act, that currently the paragraph 1 states land consolidation is there to improve production and working conditions in agriculture and in forestry, as well as to promote the general culture and development of the country, so that you can optimize rural property. Now, that's a much broader interpretation of land consolidation in the traditional sense, and it helps the rural development agencies to do something beyond or maybe alongside land consolidation towards rural spatial planning. Traditionally, land consolidation is obviously still there. The traditional land consolidation is to make the plots which are maybe distributed and fragmented, to make them more effectively and efficiently used. So this is the traditional land consolidation according to paragraph 37, which we call the standard land consolidation. Essentially, you bring plots together and you create new infrastructure, you create new nature, you create all sorts of new elements in the landscape such that the landscape can be used better, but also looks better and better adheres to lots of other criteria. So it's a very comprehensive rearrangement of space, particularly geared for rural landscapes. And so what it aims for is generally a set of comprehensive measures and planning. You integrate agriculture and forestry with the construction of roads, with the construction and planning of landscapes, with the protection of floods against floods, and with the protection of groundwater. And you do that not only as a public authority, but you do that with the people who are affected by these interventions. So all landowners, all farmers, all authorities that are relevant in this area must be included in that entire process. And not just be included, they must also make the decisions. The general idea of land consolidation projects are therefore, it should support multiple objectives. So the key objective of land consolidation is getting rid of fragmentation of ownership and of land use. That is obviously good to make use of your field, to get larger areas and to have less management because your plots are not fragmented and distributed. But in addition to that, you also intervene in the road infrastructure, you improve the road infrastructure, you get rid of land deformities, you straighten the property boundaries if necessary, you deal with erosion, and you also deal with nature at the same time. And all of that has cumulative improvement effects for the entire landscape. And in that sense, the German land consolidation is in fact rural development and rural planning, you could say. If we compare that to other land consolidation laws and executions, then Germany goes quite far in what it can do with the land consolidation law. Most of those projects are dealing much more with village renewal and village development rather than with the readjustment of plots in itself. How do they do that? They do that, and that's a very key principle of spatial planning in general. They do that usually with the stakeholders, the primary stakeholders who are the owners of the land, and together with secondary stakeholders are all the stakeholders that have to play a role in the development or in the execution of the plans, such as public corporations, water associations, holders of neighboring lands, etc. The important part is that the community of owners gets the status as a public authority for the time that the project runs. So that means that the association of participants or the community of participants has the same authority as a government authority in terms of what they can plan and what they can make decisions on for the duration of the project itself. And that may take 10, 20 years sometimes. So all that time they can decide what needs to be done, who gets the rights, who gets the money, and how is the money distributed after the land consolidation or after the project. So the community of participants has a high authority in the field of, or in the domains of appraisal. How much is the land worth? How do we demarcate the land? How do we measure it? And how do we finance also its construction? So it's not just the government, or it's actually not the government at all. They play a sort of facilitating role. It is, at the end of the day, the community of owners that makes the decision. Now, during time, Germany has developed many kinds of land consolidation. They found that the standard land consolidation, the paragraph 37 that I just mentioned, was sometimes very complex. You have to develop so many things at the same time. It has so many owners that you have to deal with, that as a result, the process became very lengthy, sometimes 20 years, 30 years. There are still projects that are still not finished after 30 or 40 years. So they looked for alternatives and for special cases of land consolidation. And as a result of that, there are various land consolidation types in Germany. Simplified version, the business version, the accelerated version, voluntary version, and the version that only deals with rural roads. And for each of those versions or types of land consolidation, there are specific procedures and specific requirements. The general principle behind all land consolidation plans or rural development plans is that the value of the land after the intervention should be higher than the value before the intervention. So that's a general principle, and there are various rules. How do you then calculate the value before and the value after? Maybe just to mention some, to provide you some examples of those specific cases. This is the business type of land consolidation. Generally, that is chosen for if it concerns the construction of a major infrastructure, like a major road or a major railway, which crosses many plots but does not take up all the plots. In that case, you have the regulation that all the owners must be involved, as well as the developer of the road, and they can decide collaboratively on how the plan and the redistribution and the compensation is then being dealt with. Important here again is that the owners are involved in the compensation measures themselves, and they have to make sure that they are being paid. So they have to co-decide on those sort of measures. It's not just the government that expropriates and then implements the project. Indeed, that is an important fact of that. Another one is, since there is a lot of forest, there's also a forest land consolidation. A lot of forest in Germany is actually in private hands, so that makes it, especially in Bavaria, for example, it's in private hands also because of historical reasons. People were the owner of a particular plot where there was forest. And that also means that over time, through inheritance, many of the ownership structures in forests are also fragmented. And there you also need to rearrange those interests to make the forest lands more effective. And you also need to align public and private interests in forests. So there is a certain portion that is still public forest and also under the public authority, but the private forest is actually under private authority. So here we have specific development and specific land consolidations, such as how do we rearrange forest land in a better way, for example, for tourism, for providing better water control in the area. Again, it is a comprehensive land consolidation project, but simply involving forests, not agricultural land. And a very specific one in certain parts of Germany is also the instrument needed for wine land. Certain parts of Germany are used for wine, usually the steeper parts. You can compare it perhaps to the tea plantations in Indonesia. So in steeper parts, usually face to the sun, of course, and there also this is usually private land. You need sometimes a complete land consolidation plan. So there again, you see that land is being arranged for vineyards. Maybe a short intervention here is that this is very particular for rural areas, but you have a similar arrangement for urban areas, of course. You can rearrange land if you want to do an intervention into urban space, and then you can make use of the building codes. It is a very similar procedure. It's reallocation of land, simplified reallocation of land. It is, in fact, urban land consolidation, which you execute in that case. And the urban land consolidation works according to the building code, not to the land consolidation law, but to the building code. But it works in a very similar fashion. Just to see, okay, how much is then, how much of these land consolidation projects are taking place? These are some statistics for a very specific one, for the quicker and the simplified land consolidations. These are lots of figures, but let me summarize those figures. We see that those simplified land consolidations, actually the number seems to decrease. Even the number of affected land seems to decrease. But recently we see an increase again of the projects that are starting, but most of the time these projects are smaller than in the past. And if we also look at all the types of land consolidation projects, we also see a number of trends. Let me also summarize that. The standard land consolidation projects are decreasing in number. The major reason is that the standard land consolidation projects need to include so many aspects for so many owners that they take a long time. And time is now more important than ever to finish projects. So we see that the willingness to start these projects is definitely decreasing, both from private owners as well as from governments. So they try to reduce that. And instead, they go for simplified projects where there is just one or two issues, a relatively limited number of issues that you can address in a relatively short time. We also see that the number of business consolidation projects are decreasing, essentially because many roads are already there, so you don't need a number of new roads. And we see that the rapid land consolidation projects also decrease. So overall, we see a decrease of land consolidation projects. Maybe a lot of the rearrangement is more or less finished. In Germany has been planned and developed to a large extent. So we see only minor changes in the fundamental structures at the moment. Last but not least, there is the issue of village renewal and integrated rural development. More and more, we see that the focus has come for spatial planning to lay on integrated rural development plans. And that has to do with the differences of access and the differences of development in rural regions. So despite the fact that agriculture has been developed and regulated to a large extent, we still see very differences between the villages themselves. And here is a nice sort of classification of what kind of villages we are talking about. On the one hand, there are villages which are increasingly depopulating. So there you get land and villages without the people. You see also sleeping villages where people just live, or where they are residents, but actually they work somewhere else. So they are going to major towns every day. Then we see patchwork villages, villages where there are some functions, but these functions are not related to each other. So there is someone who sells something, but what is being sold is not sold in the village itself. So there is not the industries or small and medium enterprises which are interrelated. And finally, we see villages that are doing very well, where villages and cities, they develop at the same level and at the same time. You can classify these villages and also the reasons behind it. The most crucial ones are the land without people. And we have seen that in especially the villages that are close to the borders, for example, where there's a lot of depopulation, where a lot of the services are no longer provided, and where there's a lot of vacancy of buildings, so empty buildings and no new function for that. And sleeping villages are villages where there's no life. People move away in the morning and they come back in the evening, and during the day and during the evening, nothing happens in those villages. And the effects of these type of villages, they are tremendous. Loss of social life, loss of vitality, loss of vibrancy. So for the villages, you really need to come up with actions. And those actions can be in the form of making sure that the whole region develops, so that those individual villages will also benefit from the advantages of that. Also making sure that there's more interest in those villages, making sure that the agricultural production increases, and making sure that the villages are not competing against each other. So there again, the agencies of rural development, they step in. Here we have the agencies responsible for particular areas in Bavaria. There are many of these sort of projects that deal now with village renewal and with integrated rural development. One of the goals of many rural development projects is to make sure that you do not just intervene in the landscape or in the infrastructure, but you try to upgrade the quality of life and the whole quality of making a life in those areas. So here are some of the tools that are available and the measures that you have available. And gradually we have seen, therefore, that village renewal is more and more an holistic exercise of regional development rather than of individual village development. And that's where I want to go to. That's where development goes, where multiple aspects are developed at the same time. So houses, work, leisure, health, living in a community, traffic, mobility, they're all developed at the same time, and they're also benefiting from the same time. Looking at the time, I want to come to then what that leads to. So at the end of the day, you get a village renewal plan that is incorporating all of those aspects at the same time. And the next step is then bringing this to a larger environment, and that is then an integrated rural development plan where you develop multiple functions at the same time. That requires, of course, cooperation between many municipalities and many partners, actually in a similar fashion as you do for land consolidation projects. So the ideas of land consolidation, how that was being executed, are now also transferred into integrated rural development plans, stakeholders being responsible, bottom-up principles, cross-sectional approaches. That means that you integrate multiple issues at the same time. So it is not based on individual interest, it's actually based on the interest of the entire area. It's not based on a single sector, it is based on cross-sectoral goals. It is based on partnership. So you have to come together in a participatory environment. It has to be dynamic, so you also have to update it from time to time. And yet it should provide the solutions in the long term. So to show you just one example, and then this is, I believe, the last but one slide. When you notice certain problems, spatial problems in an area, such as there are floods, there's also income losses, the area has potentials, but they don't make use of it, the roads are not connected. These are sector-based problems that individual agencies have raised. Then you try to develop a project which deals with those problems all at the same time. So you develop, for example, agriculture, tourism, and land conservation together through improving the flood measures. So once you make a dike or an irrigation canal or a drainage canal, then at the same time, you also try to develop the agriculture, the plots that are related to it, the access to tourism and nature conservation, and you discuss that in a participatory environment and you allocate responsibilities. So that makes the current approach much more integrated. It focuses not just on individual villages, but on multiple villages, and it can include many other measures alongside the rural development plan. So the end goal is then to have integrated rural development or spatial planning concepts, if you upgrade it to or upscale it to a larger area, an integrated set of concepts which you use in your planning, where you, and if you want to translate that into a plan of action, these are the building blocks. Describe the region, describe the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and from that develop your concept and then implement those concepts in the spatial planning exercise. Well, that's it from my side. My apologies if it was a bit too long, but I'm welcome to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor De Vries. We have 10 to 15 minutes for question and answer. I guess here in the participant we have Pak Hadi Arnowo, who has raised hand first, and then Christian William and Ibu Selvi. Okay, we will start with Pak Hadi as the first one who raised hand. Silakan, Pak Hadi.
Okay. Guten Tag, Herr Timo. My name is Hadi Arnowo. Okay, I speak English. I'm interested in land consolidation in your country. You have a long history about the practice of land consolidation. I want to know about the progress of land consolidation in your country currently, because there is changing in city development of city, and then increment population. So how about the orientation of land consolidation now in Germany? And second, how about the problem in conducting land consolidation currently? Is it about the social approach or physical approach? That is my question. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yes, well, I quickly ran through the statistics, but the traditional land consolidation projects are decreasing, we could say, both in numbers and in size of projects. So that is true. But you see a conversion from land consolidation to integrated rural development projects. So in the rural areas, we definitely see another kind of orientation, because the ILE, so-called ILE projects, they enable or they are better able to include many other aspects like nature conservation or like tourist development, which theoretically you could do in land consolidation, but practically There's not an obligation. The law doesn't state you have to protect nature, for example. In concept, you could include that. So I think there you see a differentiation. On the other hand, you're absolutely right. There is more and more attention for urban development and metropolitan development. But there you also have the urban land consolidation option. There's actually multiple options which I didn't discuss. A recent one is also Bouwland, that you actually can acquire land for urban development. That's a new possibility, and usually that needed to be done with in a land consolidation type of procedure. But now you can also do it without that. So there's both the urban land consolidation possibility where you redistribute land and property in an urban development, but there's also now a new the bouwmobilisierungs. It's mobilizing urban land for urban development. There's also the new possibility, which essentially to a large extent is also based, or urban development planning, which essentially is based on more expropriation principles rather than on land consolidation and redistribution principles. But the need in urban areas is definitely increasing. So that's why they look for new instruments there. Yeah. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
Okay, thank you. Vielen Dank.
Ya, danke.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Hadi. Thank you, Professor De Vries. We can move to the next participant who will ask questions. Saya melihat Pak Kepala Biro Hukum sini berkenan duluan, Pak. We have our legal bureau, the head of legal bureau, who I think will ask questions. Pak Karo, silakan.
Okay, sorry, Mr. siapa ya? Mr. Walter ya. I am Joko Subagio. I am a director of land dispute resolution by litigation. Not a legal bureau, the head of legal bureau anymore. I'm a very interested with about the social obligation of ownership. As we know that in our basic principle of agrarian law, number 5, 1960, which is stipulated that all of land rights have a social function. But sometimes we easily find in our country, in its implementation, there is a property which has no access to the street due to the existence of other property which is built in front of it. So I really want to know what is the meaning of a social obligation of ownership actually in Germany, and then is there any specific law regarding to the social obligation of ownership, and is there any fine if for those who break the rule or regulation related to or regarding to a social obligation of ownership itself? Thank you.
Yeah. There's obviously a legal way to explain that, but that may take a whole discussion and a discourse. But simply put, the social obligation is that you cannot do anything that you want with your property. So on the one hand, that means that you cannot do illegal things with your property, but you can also not disturb your neighbors with your property. So if you create something smelly or that has a nuisance or a lot of noise with your property, you cannot state that, it's my property, I can do what I want. So that is also the social obligation. But it also means in practice that you have to take care of your property. So there is a responsibility to take care of your property in the proper way. Now, what does that mean? It is considered, in that sense, it's considered bad if you leave your property vacant, for example, for a long time. If there's lots of things happening with your property that is sort of disturbing the environment. And it also means that you have to adhere to the conventions or the institutions related to the environment. One thing which I can note from personal experience is that when we rented a house with a hedge, with some trees, then we had the obligation also as renters to cut the trees at a particular height. And I didn't realize why that was, why they specify me as a renter that I cut the trees at 1.50 meters. That was in my rental contract, until I realized that there was a social obligation of the owner to adhere to the local government regulations of the street image of that entire village, where they say we want to have a green area that looks proper and tidy. So these were sort of social obligations which were specified in these very particular rules. And the question of who punishes you, or what sort of punishments do you get? Yeah, that's a good question. I would need to find that out. What sort of cases were there where the social obligation was actually not taken? Let's say personally, it meant for me, for that cutting of the trees, that the owner would come to me and say, you have to do it, otherwise I end the contract. That's the sort of consequence on a personal level. But I guess if the owner doesn't adhere to it, then it becomes a bit more complicated. You cannot expropriate the owner because he doesn't meet that obligation. I don't think so. But I would need to look for cases and jurisprudence for that. That's actually an interesting question. Yeah, thanks for that. I'll take that up.
Thank you very much, Walter. Terima kasih, Pak Arwin.
The discussion is very interesting, but our time is very limited, and then there are two more participants who will ask question on the line. The next, Pak Christian William from Nagekyo Plan Office.
Okay,
Pak Christian.
Okay, thank you. Guten Tag, Professor Walter.
Guten Tag. Yeah.
My name is Christian. I have a few questions. First, one of your issue is climate change. We know that the world is growing with electric vehicle. What is your view about electric vehicle and the impact for the transportation itself? It's the first. And the second, we know that Germany is, in the past, they have East and West. What is the difference before and after for the spatial plan for Germany after the unification? And the third, from your experience, how to make sure that the government will execute or make sure that the government will make the spatial plan work for their community. That's my question. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, first for the electronic vehicles, I think obviously there should be an impact for the infrastructure at large. So it's not just how do you create roads, but also how do you create facilities for uploading the car. That has been under consideration for a long time. You know that in Germany there's many car companies like BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen. So for a long time they were opposing any sort of change in that regulation, but gradually they're also shifting there. I guess there's many discourses that argue that if cars become more electronic, but also self-driving, then you can change entire plans because you don't need parking facilities anymore close to your house. You can just call a car and then store the car somewhere else. But we don't see a lot of those facilities yet. There are obviously many discussions about parking places and how to organize that, especially in bigger cities. But car ownership and therefore also road infrastructure is still considered vital, especially for rural areas, because connections to rural areas, they're almost impossible if you don't have a car. So public transport is nice, but sometimes there's a bus every 2 hours or maybe twice a day or something like that in remote rural areas. So they are very dependent on cars. And Also related to that is the whole issue of renewable energies in general. You need a lot of space for renewable energies. So which space are we going to use and where should that be? Well, that definitely is on the agenda. Yeah, that doesn't answer that question completely. But to go to your second question, differences between East and West, there are still many differences, especially with regards to land ownership. A lot of the land was obviously in the hands of the state in Eastern Germany, and a lot of that land has been privatized or sold to the highest bidder. And as a result of that, you could say that a lot of land grabbing took place, and also a lot of land is still vacant or is not properly used. In addition to that, in the East, there were many mining areas, and many of those mines were closed. So it does not only lead to non-used mining areas, but also to a lot of population that suddenly doesn't have a job. So you see in that sense that you also have rural poverty or a difference when you compare that to western part of Germany. So those are just two reasons why the eastern part is not fully integrated economically or socially in the rest of Germany, despite the solidarity tax that we paid for a long time. And the third question, now I forgot again what that was. That was related to
how to make sure that the government will execute the special plan that we have created.
Right, at the local level. The thing is that Germany is highly decentralized. So also local levels have a high degree of autonomy and self-determination on what they decide. So it is not such that the national government decides where should what take place. They just provide the general principles. And that's why I said there are general principles at the national level. And they use a highly detailed system of monitoring with indicators. Okay, how can you prove that you adhere to those general principles? But at the end of the day, the local government decides what they want to do. And that's what you also see back in land consolidation or in rural development plans. There's a high degree of autonomy in the execution. So there's not a big penalty or something that comes from the top. Unless, of course, they really go against the principles, then it's another issue. But yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
Professor De Vries, our time is actually over, but
okay. Thank you very much.
To be fair with one more, the lady that has raised hand, I hope you don't mind with one more question, please.
Sure, yes, I'm all right. Yeah.
Oke, Mbak Selvi, silakan.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Arwin. Thank you, Professor De Vries. I only have one question, and I'll try to make it short. My name is Selvi, and my question is about the public-private partnership. Previously, you mentioned in your presentation that the private sectors are involved in the central places concept. So I want to ask about the rural development. Are the private sectors also involved by the government? And if that's so, how is the strategy of the government to limiting the intervention of the private sectors? Because we know that private sectors is always oriented to profit, and on the other hand, the rural area is have the different characteristics with the urban. For example, they have the conservation area. That's my question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's a difficult question. Private sector can have different roles. Private sector can, for example, in land consolidation projects, the primary deciders are the owners of the land. But the private sector can be an owner of the land and then is a direct stakeholder, which has to be included. And we see that not only from the agricultural part or for the construction part, but we also see nature conservation nature conservation NGOs and non-government agencies trying to buy up land, sometimes even 1 by 1 meter. Because if they're an owner, then they have to be included in the decision-making process. So we see that the de facto private sector is already involved in many of the decision-making processes, formally, in the formal regulations, but they also are involved informally. That's why I see this sort of countervailing influence of government levels is also complemented with influence from private sectors who are trying to lobby, who are trying to make deals. So I think you cannot deny that the private sector plays a big role in that, and yeah, profit optimization is definitely one of their goals. So this plays a role in the whole process. That's true. How to curb that or how to balance that, yeah, that is still a question of the decision-making process. Is the governance happening in the right way, or is it inclining to profits more than it is to public benefits? Yeah, that's a difficult one. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Standing up, Mbak Selvi.
Ya, terima kasih Pak. Udah jawab.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor De Vries. Thank you for the extra one question.
Yes, thanks for having me here again. And
overall, on behalf of the all participants, I think I once again thank you for the valuable presentation and fruitful discussion, of course. We do hope that in someday we will have another more discussion with you and the other speakers. Thank you for today's session, and terima kasih Bapak Ibu semua yang telah hadir sampai dengan akhir dari pertemuan kita pada hari ini. Semoga bermanfaat, dan saya selaku moderator mohon maaf jika ada salah-salah kata. Terima kasih. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya kembalikan kepada MC.
Baik, Bapak Ibu hadirin yang kami hormati, dengan demikian selesai sudah seluruh rangkaian acara webinar internasional hari ini. Kami ucapkan terima kasih kepada Bapak Moderator dan para narasumber karena sudah memandu webinar dan memberikan ilmu yang bermanfaat. Tak lupa juga kami ucapkan terima kasih kepada Bapak Ibu peserta karena sudah antusias berdiskusi pada webinar hari ini. Baiklah, sebelum webinar ditutup, kami ingatkan kembali kepada Bapak Ibu peserta untuk bisa melakukan presensi di LMS PPSDM dengan password 1515. Sekali lagi dengan password 1515. Juga kami informasikan bahwa webinar hari ini dapat Ibu Bapak saksikan kembali di akun YouTube PPSDM Kementerian ATR BPN. Saya Indit sebagai MC pamit undur diri, mohon maaf jika ada kesalahan. Selamat sore, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih, mohon izin live.
Terima kasih Pak Arwin semua, Mbak Indit, terima kasih Prof. Walter, Bapak Ibu.